Okay, might as well just get into it. Hi, everybody. Welcome to something that I am tepidly referring to as the Omega-3 podcast. Uh, this is going to be a fish based Magic the Gathering, of course, so, merfolk in actuality uh, podcast because I am very excited about the position of merfolk in current standard. I have been honestly for the past several months, like probably since at the very least since Foundations came out, and I noticed a lot of support for the merfolk tribe. There was also Ixalan, which gave a lot of support for it. Before that, there's always been merfolk has always been sort of like in the periphery, but I feel like now, current day, it's in the best position that it's been in a long time to actually see standard play. You may not believe it, but hopefully, if you are watching this, you at least have some interest in that possibility. So, to begin, I would say if you're not aware of the current situation of Merfolk and Standard, I did make a video not too long ago where I made a tier list of all of my favorite cards. Uh, because I made that video, I'm not going to be, you know, spending a lot of time actually talking about, what I think the best cards in the set are. I'm going to go over that like kind of briefly, especially because some time has passed since that video, but that's not going to be like the primary like focus or anything here. If you want to know what cards I think are like really the best in the current standard metagame, at least until the next set comes out, I would definitely refer to that previous video. I do want to take some time because I have been playing a lot of games. I tallied it up uh, since um, excuse me, since Lorwyn came out. I've played probably close to 95 standard games with a Merfolk deck. One of the various versions I've come up with, probably around 8 or so. The one that I have right now is definitely not what I would consider to be like the final version. And I think there is definitely some room to play around as far as like what you want to focus on. If you want to kind of like lean on aggressive merfolk, if you want to lean on like a deep root pilgrimage focused, tapping synergy deck, if you want to go towards something that's more along the lines of like enchantment based. There's a lot of interesting ways to take it. But this is probably a more stable version of the deck. It has round about 60% win rate, at least in platinum ranked, which I know is far from the absolute uh, uh, cream of the crop. I still very rarely see actual like meta game decks, and so I'm not going to be talking about like the most competitive, but I will at least go into the metagame. I have played certain versions of Mono Green, as well as Demir, Reanimator, and there are favorable lines even against those decks. So we're going to get into that kind of stuff here. To begin with, I want to talk about the current Merfolk that I'm most excited about, especially after that string of experiences. We're going to start with the one mana players. Not all of not all of these are actually considerables, but I just wanted to display the current one mana options that Merfolk has, and I think in general you can say that the value and the quality of the one mana tribe members have been the hallmarks of a good deck, a good standard possibility. And so I want to highlight a few great players here. First of all, the most obvious and most recent one is the Wanderbrine Trapper over here, which came out in Lorwyn, and has at 1 mana a very good stat line, 2 power, 1 toughness, and a very helpful ability which synergizes amazingly well with a key support piece that we've gotten it from all the way back in Ixalan, which is Deeproot Pilgrimage. When I originally made my tier list video, I was not entirely certain of the interaction between Wanderbrine Trapper and Deeproot Pilgrimage, but because of the way this works, and I'm almost 150% sure here. By paying for the cost of Wanderbrine Trapper, you're actually tapping a merfolk twice. You're tapping this creature once, and then I guess, I don't know specifically why, but I guess because there's a comma there, the fact that you tap another untapped creature you control, that's actually two separate instances of that, and it causes the Deeproot Pilgrimage to tap twice. That is not the same as, for instance, if you're going to pay a convoke cost. Like if you're going to convoke a creature, I believe. Oh God, I might still be wrong. I don't know. It's really good. The fact that you're tapping your merfolk to pay for costs is always really good. It might even be just like the best there. But I'm like 90% certain if you tap multiple merfolk to pay a convoke cost, it still only triggers Deeproot Pilgrimage once. Definitely in combat, if you tap multiple creatures to attack, it only triggers once. So, but anyway, Wanderbrine Trapper, amazing because it definitely triggers twice. Another really good piece that I think is overlooked is actually the Cenote Scout, Cenote Scout, whatever you want to call it. It is green, however, because of the current land base in Standard, and the land base in Standard is so amazing, especially for a tribal deck like ours. The fact that we have access to Cavern of Souls, the fact that we have access to as well Secluded Courtyard, an amazing tribal land there. We have Starting Town, which is any color. If you're willing to pay a lot of life, and I'm really not because I don't find it as useful, but there's also the multiversal passage, the Omen Pass land, which can tap for multiple colors. Combine that with the shock lands and the not going to use surveillance in this deck, but the shock lands and the verge lands. It's actually not a big ask to put Cenote Scout in an otherwise Azorius Merfolk deck. This is a good one. Mindspring Merfolk as well, I think, despite the fact that it's a less powerful 1-mana option, it does, again, synergize with Deeproot Pilgrimage, makes all your merfolk bigger. This is a pseudo-lord. I always fall back on this as being, a piece to fall back on in the late game. And then there have been multiple times where, you draw this as a top deck in the late game, comes down, the next turn, you redraw a hand. It's actually not unheard of for that to happen. I do want to point as well the last one that I think is relevant, Mistway Spy. I've come back and forth on whether or not this is actually a good choice. My current version of the deck doesn't run it. However, I think it is something to definitely consider. If you decide that maybe you want to do a mono blue, the fact that it is flying means that it will 90-ish% of the time be able to swing in freely to trigger Deeproot Pilgrimage, other things like that. Also great as a blocker if your opponent happens to have flyers. These other ones, specifically Seeker of Sunlight, which obviously, let's be real. And then Jadelight Spelunker. I think these are just like not as relevant. The amount of times, or rather I should say, the times when you will have a lot of mana to make a big Jadelight Spelunker, rather than exploring X times, those are generally when you want to be drawing a card. I feel like if you were going to play a Jadelight Spelunker with a lot of mana, you would almost rather have a Mindspring Merfolk, draw those cards, and then also like make the rest of your board a little bit bigger. But there's always, like I said, there's room for interpretation there. Those are the 1-mana plays that I think are good, but the next up are the Lords, which are also incredibly important. These are the 3 cards, the 3 merfolk that I would consider to be, the Lord effects. The fact that there are 3 of them means that it's very consistent. You'll almost always be increasing the size of the creatures that you have. Mindspring Merfolk is, not entirely a lord, but it's not, you're not really able to ignore the fact that this does buff the team. Deep Channel Duelist, an amazing uncommon. This I think makes the deck very accessible. It's something that I appreciate, the fact that it is uncommon. It's a lord, and it also untaps your merfolk, which, again, the fact that we're tapping a lot is a very... It's interesting. So it's not the most obvious mechanic. I think it's... It tells me that there's somebody at Wizards, and probably it's obvious who. I don't actually know myself. I have my theories, but somebody really likes Merfolk because while this is not an obviously strong mechanic, it is deeply synergistic with a lot of things in weird roundabout ways. Deep Channel, or excuse me, Deep Root Pilgrimage is only the most obvious, but it's there's other reasons why being able to tap and untap things at certain moments is really good. Deep Channel Duelist coming down, letting you swing in with your buffed merfolk, and then untapping that merfolk to be able to block again later is just really nice. It's good to have him there. Deepway Navigator, the fact that it's flash, amazing. Again, merfolk having flash indicates to me that somebody likes us, somebody wants us to have fun, because being able to hold up mana, especially in blue and white, is I mean, it's really what gives us the potential to do amazing things. I think that it gives us the ability to withstand some of the potentially devastating plays that other, if I'm being honest, other meta top level decks have the capacity to make. Being able to hold up Deepway Navigator, play at the end of the turn if the opponent doesn't play, any threats, or being able to send it down to interrupt combat is also very, very powerful. Love these cards, these things. 4 of Deep Channel Duelist, 4 of Deepway Navigator, generally 2 to 3 of Mindspring Merfolk, because again, it's really like a secondary lord effect, but really 11 to 12 lords in the deck, 10 to 11 to 12 lords in the deck really just makes it quite nice. I don't have it in here, and I don't think I actually mentioned it at all, but I do want to add really quick Mockingbird, because this card as well, basically, if you decide to add it, my current version of my deck doesn't include it, but this is also, again, like just increasing the number of lords. If you play it, throwing this down, you're getting the same effects as all these guys. We have the ability to grow the board in both directions at the same time, which is very nice. Next, I want to go to some of the kind of support pieces, the other merfolk that kind of like round out like the backup slots. First of all, Brineborn Cutthroat I think is the least obvious, but I found it to be sort of the glue that holds the deck together. You'll notice that all of these pieces have flash, and I really think that once you get to the 2 and up mana slot in Merfolk, flash is just so necessary. Being able to hold up 2 mana plays, and in some cases 1 mana plays at flash speed, just bring us from a limited deck into what I would consider to be like an actual like standard contender, because this is what we end up being really is a flash control deck. It's like we're a lot of times after turn 1 we're doing land go, and these pieces all allow us to do that. Brineborn Cutthroat coming down on turn 2, potentially, even if this just comes down to interrupt combat, that means it's a 2 mana removal spell, which is something that you wouldn't expect a deck like this to have. If it comes down and it sticks, then now all of our flash speed plays later on grow this threat, making it more and more of a lightning rod for our opponent's removal, meaning that our lords back here stay a little bit safer. Floodpit's Drowner, amazing 2 mana play. Dimir already makes very good use of this card. Other decks make use of this card. It's obvious why it's good. Um, the fact that we're also able to leverage the creature type is something that basically just makes it even a bigger value add. The fact that it taps again is another. It taps or potentially never taps is a very a synergistic thing for us. It's slightly less synergistic with Deep Root Pilgrimage itself, just because it doesn't tap consistently, but in other ways it's very nice. Disruptor of Currents, the mana value, you know, the five mana value of 5 makes it seem a little bit iffy, but because it has Convoke, it's actually very easy to cast this card, even with just 2 lands. There's a lot of I play my Merfolk deck very close to the ground. 20 lands, I think 21 lands at most, and so there's a lot of games where I just top out at 2, and on 2 lands, you can still pretty consistently cast this card on turn 4 or 5, because you have those 1 mana merfolk coming out, you have the 2 mana merfolk coming out, and once you have enough of them, Disruptor of Currents, it's very easy to just have this card come out, still on curve despite not playing lands. For that reason, I've actually found this to be kind of like one of my favorite higher mana value plays from Lorwyn that came out. And then Tishana's Tidebinder. This card is just obviously powerful, even going all the way back to eternal formats like Pioneer, Modern, Legacy. Very good card. Again, the fact that it is flash speed, the fact that we can leverage the creature type as well. I don't play this in the main board just because there are certainly decks where it is not as useful to have this interrupting effect, but being able to send this in on game 2 when we know that our opponents are either focusing on artifacts or focusing on creatures with triggered abilities or other things like that, it is incredibly powerful and amazing card. um, all of these like powerful pieces make up the core of a deck that is quite difficult to deal with at times, while also maintaining an aggressive board state. Like, our win condition is just overwhelming with creatures while interrupting our opponents. And these cards largely allow us to get that done. There are a few other cards as well. It's not just creatures. There are some spells that you need to rely on. And interestingly enough, I want to point out over here on these non-Merfolk creatures, 3 spells that are all from Spider-Man, or if you're playing on Arena, from Omen Paths, which are honestly in my opinion, just like 3 almost honorary merfolk tribal spells. 6 command down here, I'm testing it currently and I'm still kind of lukewarm on it. I don't really know. It's fine, but I think that the more essential instant sorcery, or not even sorceries, they're all instants, the more essential spells in the deck are these 3. Secret Identity, the fact that we are able to either turn our merfolk into a very capable blocker, including the flying keyword, being able to add damage in certain situations to just close out the game unexpectedly. Secret Identity is amazing. And then the other mode, there's a second mode where you're able to give your creature hexproof, which we're very weak to targeted removal. 1 mana, being able to do either one, amazing. Important thing to note, this does change creature types, which can at times make things difficult. This will, if we target a creature with this spell, it is no longer going to be buffed by our lords. The Deep Channel Duelist won't untap it at the end of combat. It won't untap from Deepway Navigator. it won't get a 1/1 counter from the Mindspring merfolk, things like that. Sorry. And then, but other than that, it's still incredibly powerful. Detect Intrusion. I think this is an amazing counterspell. Instants and sorceries only, as far as spells are concerned, means that it's not like a main board consideration. There's just too many permanents that are basically spells on permanents, and Detect Intrusion just won't hit a lot of those. But it is very good when it comes to like control decks, control matchups, and things like that. Being able to hit triggered abilities does come into play sometimes, but the biggest thing that actually makes this incredibly good in a Merfolk deck, I think, is the Inweb, or the web slinging ability. Being able to pay 1 mana for the spell, and then also bringing a Merfolk back, which a lot of our Merfolk have enters the battlefield abilities. A lot of our lord over here, the Mindspring Merfolk, has an exhaust ability, which can be reset if it comes back onto the battlefield. Mockingbird can become something different. Things like that make Inweb actually very beneficial in our deck. And then, we're always attacking, so we're almost always going to have a tapped creature. And then finally, Spectral Restitching, which gives us much needed defense against board wipes. Being able to, play 2 Merfolk, and then on turn 3 leave up Spectral Restitching to avoid a wrath is amazing. Another thing this does is this clears the opponent's board if they are holding up blockers. We can use Spectral Restitching to exile their blockers, get in the last points of damage that we need. Incredibly big. These 3 spells, I think, whether in the main board or in the sideboard, are almost essential. Deep-Root Pilgrimage, I've been talking about it this whole time. I don't think this is as essential of a piece as I did at one time. In certain versions of the Merfolk deck, I think it is essential, just because it generates bodies, it generates evasive bodies nonetheless, things that we can leverage for Convoke, things that we can leverage for defense, offense. It can be really good in certain cases. However, at 2 mana, doing nothing on play is at times just too big of a cost to pay in the current standard, which is crazy to think about. But if it comes down and it doesn't actually, win you the game, or at least put you a decent way, towards winning the game, it can be too much of a liability. And then, if you consider the biggest letdown when it comes to Deep-Root Pilgrimage, if you play a 1 mana Merfolk, play Deep-Root Pilgrimage, attack with that 1 mana Merfolk, and then they just destroy it, or they just destroy it even before it attacks. You are now completely out on turn 1 and 2, and on turn 3, at best, you're just going to play 1 or 2 Merfolk that you'll have to wait to attack with until turn 4. It puts you incredibly behind when it comes to those sorts of matchups where the opponent is using even just a little bit of control. But still, I am using it in my current build of the deck. I do side it out pretty consistently if I'm playing any type of control matchup, any type of removal-based strategy. It's just gone immediately. Other things to note, just really popular cards in our colors. The fact that we are Azorius gives us amazing access to Rest in Peace, incredibly necessary. In Mono Blue, we have no access to graveyard control, no significant access to graveyard control, and so being able to play Rest in Peace, and at 2 mana nonetheless, it really saves us. We do not really make any use of the graveyard. At least I haven't found any reason to keep the graveyard stocked. There are Merfolk from Lorwyn that kind of interact with the graveyard, but I have not found them to be incredibly relevant. So Rest in Peace is a beautiful sideboard card. Again, this pushes us towards liability, or not liability, viability in standard. Other good removal pieces, Into the Floodmaw, All-Star, blue, 1 mana removal, and then Seam Rip, which, again, is sort of a more of a sideboard consideration, but can be incredibly useful there. There's other white removal spells that I've seen people consider. I did want to talk briefly about as well some potential relevant cards. Like I've actually seen these in other versions of the deck, and I've considered I've seen a couple. I've only been in probably 2 mirror matches, and I do want to include in here one other card that I noticed, which was Springleaf Drum. In other versions of the deck, I have seen these played, specifically Sheltered by Ghosts in versions that are more kind of enchantment focused. There's also another one which gives a creature +1/+1 for each enchantment you have. And then Shard Mage's Rescue, a 1 mana protection spell. These are interesting if you're going to go for the enchantment route. I think they're incredibly relevant, however, not what I would really go for. And then I found an opponent playing Springleaf Drum, which is quite synergistic, especially with the Deeproot Pilgrimage. However, and I ended up winning this match. So just to not to say that one match means anything, but what I notice about Springleaf Drum is that it wants to leverage our creatures to play bigger spells, and I haven't really found that bigger spells are necessary. I know that player also seemed to be flooding out a lot on lands, so I don't know if maybe they would agree that they could do with sort of slimming their strategy down, or if they want to invest in bigger things, kind of like doing that instead. But I'm not entirely sold on Springleaf Drum. I did want to take a moment to bring up this card, Split Up. It's possible that with certain meta proclivities currently, that Split Up might be necessary. There are decks, specifically mono green, but also other ones, other fringe, like tier 2 and tier 3 considerations where we do get outpaced. The merfolk deck isn't the fastest growing deck, or excuse me, the fastest growing board state. It's just a consistently growing board state that interferes with other plays while it does that. And so I have given significant thought to Split Up, particularly because of our ability to control our tapping and untapping of things. This could be something, again, like if Springleaf Drum is more your jam, like if you can kind of manipulate to get your creatures tapped more before you're splitting up, and then you can kind of like get something like that going. But the issue with that is that you would want to basically, the situation in which you would want Split Up, you would want to split up before attacking, which means you would want to tap your creatures and then untap them, which is something you can do because we have over here, we have the Deepway Navigator. So it's a very real consideration to say that you could split up using mana from Springleaf Drum and then cast the Deepway Navigator did I say the name right? I believe I did. Deepway Navigator, yes. And then go in and attack after clearing the way of blockers. It's a consideration. It's a thought. But I don't really know. It's kind of an if. I next want to talk about merfolk that are definitely not in consideration. Some of the legendaries that have worked in other decks, in particular, Kiora, I would point to, and Sig, uh, not in consideration. I mean, Kiora is fine in its ability to kind of filter through the deck. However, it just doesn't do enough. We're not, again, not really looking at graveyard synergies too closely because we benefit so much from playing Rest in Peace. And so for that reason, we're not really counting on having the octopus creature too often. It also doesn't benefit from any of our other well, I don't know. It's an 8/8 octopus. It's not like we care that it doesn't get a 1/1 buff. But even still, I haven't found Cure to be that relevant. And then Sig, I talked about this in my tier list video. I really don't see Sig as being beneficial. I'll be honest, I haven't crafted him yet. I haven't played with him yet. But I just don't see a situation in which at such a slow pace I would want to have these sort of effects. Like at 2 mana already, I'm either looking for something that is going to buff the team or is going to, be able to be held up at flash speed, basically. I just don't think Sig makes the cut, which is sad because it is a cool card. I just think that the format is too slow. Maybe if the merfolk deck slows down like by 1 to 2 turns, this is a consideration. But at that point in time, we're looking at a completely different deck. So just keep him in mind for later. Another one that I want to talk about that I don't believe in, that I've actually seen a lot of people play, is Champions of the Shoal. I just don't think this is it. At 4 mana, no matter how you look at it, at 4 mana, you just don't want to be doing something this slowly. At 4 mana, people are wiping the board. At 4 mana, uh, people are drawing 3 cards, gaining life, and playing an extra land. At 4 mana, they're exiling any target non-land permanent and gaining life, or some crazy nonsense like that. We don't want to be coming down at 4 mana, making a moderately big body without any evasion, and then tapping a creature, especially if it comes at the cost of exiling a merfolk really from anywhere, even from whether it's from our battlefield or from the hand. It just doesn't, to me, it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel like it. I do not believe at all in Champions of the Shoal. I think this card is a trap. Even though Nikachu, even including Nikachu, has played it, I wouldn't go for it. Not me personally. And then rounding out just the cards that I think are less relevant. Green cards, green merfolk in standard. I don't think any of these are really hitting, at least not currently. All of the Lost Caverns merfolk are technically in standard until next year. However, it's hard for me to see the format changing so much that we want to be focusing on, either graveyard interactions or these big mana plays that, do something semi-relevant on turn 5, assuming we have a big board. Very slow, just not really hitting. The one exception is Cenote Scout, which I mentioned earlier. And it's 1 mana, it comes down immediately, does something, and that's good. That's all we want from it. One cool thing after this, I think I'm almost done with everything I wanted to say. I don't know how long this has been going. 34 minutes. Yeah, this will be like a 40 45 minute podcast. That'll be amazing. Um, one moment. Nice. Next up, I wanted to talk about some of the upcoming merfolk. So we have a set coming out, I think in just a week or two, I think like 10 or so days. It's going to hit Arena, uh, which is Secrets of Strixhaven. And there are actually, surprisingly, some merfolk coming out in that set. And probably unsurprisingly, most of them are kind of garbage. I don't really believe in any of these. I want to give a small word to Orisa because I think it's not completely unheard of for us to get to 10 toughness or greater, and at that point, having a 2 mana that comes down and just straight up draws 2 cards isn't the worst. I don't like that it's legendary. It means that I would never have more than just 2 or 3 of these in the deck at any one time. But I mean, I don't know. I could think of maybe a certain situation where this could do something for the deck, maybe. Um, but really, I think the one that I want to highlight is the harmonized trio. Um, I'm just gonna read this one out. This is a 1 blue mana, 1/1 Merfolk Bard Wizard. It enters, and it has the it enters. Of course, it enters. It's a creature. I'm sorry. It has the activated ability. You can tap it and tap 2 untapped creatures you control, and this creature becomes prepared. So it's a prepared creature, which means it does have a spell connected to it, and the spell that it has is Brainstorm. Brainstorm is a 1 blue mana instant that says draw 3 cards, then put 2 cards from your hand on top of your library in any order. So this is what do I even say? I think this is probably supposed to be a card for like eternal formats. Brainstorm, to my knowledge, is not in Pioneer. Maybe it is, but I don't think it's in Pioneer. Um, and I'm pretty sure it is in Modern, which means that this is going to be the first time that Pioneer has any access to a card like this, and this means that Modern has access to its second copy of the closest thing that it can get to Ancestral Recall. In Standard, just by the way, even though I say that it's designed for Eternal formats, I'm not saying it's good in Eternal formats. I mean, it does come down on turn 1, does nothing. You have to have 2 other creatures before you can even prepare it, and then cast Brainstorm. So it's a lot of hoops to jump through. It's probably not going to be necessarily good in a lot of decks. I don't think it's going to warp any formats, definitely, but it's just just saying, it's like this is at its mana cost, and for what it does, it just it seems like it's designed to be viable in Eternal formats. In Standard, I'm curious about this card. First of all, this is like the Wanderbrine Trapper in that it has an activated ability that triggers Deeproot Pilgrimage twice. I believe it should only trigger it twice, maybe more times, who knows. On top of that, it's 1 mana. Like we said, having high quality 1 mana merfolk is the hallmark of our deck. And it has a spell that has an interesting, or it has a prepared spell that's interesting. But there's some caveats. So Brainstorm Brainstorm is generally good because it allows you to draw 3 cards and then put 2 cards on top of your deck. And then in a format especially like Modern, where there's a lot of fetch lands, lands that you can sacrifice to search your library for another land and then shuffle. In formats where it's very easy and trivial to shuffle your library, you basically get to put those 2 cards that were less relevant away. Like they go just into your library somewhere else. You're not likely to draw them again. However, Brainstorm is less valuable in formats where you are not as capable of controlling the top of your deck. Because the cards that you put away, the 2 least relevant cards, become your draws for the next 2 turns, essentially. Which is actually a not very insignificant draw, like downside. Like that's actually not what you really want to be doing most of the time. You don't want to be forcing yourself to draw the 2 cards that you thought were less relevant. You want to be drawing different cards, cards that will help you, cards that are more likely to help you win the game. And so for that reason, I think it's actually less good. It's nice in the sense that let's go through a couple of play patterns. So let's say Harmonized Trio, turn 1 you play the Harmonized Trio. Turn 2 you play a Wanderbrine Trapper and a Cenote Scout. All right. And then you tapped Harmonized Trio, and now you can cast Brainstorm. So you have not yet attacked after turn 2, and your opponent has not interacted with you. I already feel like that's very counterproductive to what we want to be doing. So that alone tells me that Harmonized Trio is not something I would play on turn 1. So okay. Instead, let's say that it's later in the game, and now we have some number of merfolk, some amount of mana, and then we play Harmonized Trio, probably with fewer cards in hand, because we tend to play our cards not very quickly, but we want to have a consistent amount of pressure on the board state. So we'll have fewer cards in hand. Later in the game, generally I have as many as 4 cards if it's turn 3 or later. 4 is about the average. So you play this. The next turn you play another merfolk. You get another merfolk out, some amount of merfolk on the battlefield, and you can tap it. And now you probably have the mana available to actually cast the Brainstorm. Whether you do that on your turn, which is probably less good, or the turn after that, what you would do is you would be leaving up the Harmonized Trio. You would have a way to leave up or bring back up, 2 other merfolk. And then the next turn on blockers would be probably when you play this. So very likely, and again, this is assuming that you don't have Deeproot Pilgrimage, because Deeproot Pilgrimage is just one specific card. You can't reliably say that you're going to have it. You play this later in the game. You block with this and maybe 1 or 2 other merfolk, and then in response to declaring blockers, like before damage goes through, tap this, tap your 2 other merfolk, and then you Brainstorm immediately during combat, essentially. Your opponent is not going to want to counter a 1 mana spell during combat, because they're more likely to want to save that mana for either their second main phase, or they're going to want to hold that mana up to counter whatever play that you find with your brainstorm. So that could be kind of good. It's a one use, but it's still not bad if, again, you can make really good use of that, draw 3, and then put 2 back. I think Harmonized Trio is going to end up being kind of in the same boat as Jade Light's Spelunker. It's why would I go through all that when Mindspring Merfolk taps just itself and then just gives me the amount of cards that I draw? It's more mana, granted, but it doesn't require me to tap multiple creatures, and it allows me to just straight draw any number of cards. I have brought myself around. I think Harmonized Trio is going to be just a B tier 1-drop. However, at the end of the year, we are going to be losing Lost Caverns of Ixalan. And so maybe when Cenote Scout is no longer a player, Harmonized Trio can be a consideration. I don't think it's a consideration right now. Let's quickly wrap up this little chit chat with just a review of kind of like the current standard metagame. I kind of want to just talk about specifically what kind of ideas Merfolk have against these plays, because we do have ideas against these plays. I want to start with the most obvious one, which is the Excruciator. I know this is down here at 7%, but it's still a significant player, specifically with the Superior Spider-Man or the Karavek, whatever you want to call it. Dimir Excruciator gives us 2 very good outs. Specifically, Dimir Excruciator is when we want to be going really all in on our ability counters, which we have. Specifically, Detect Intrusion. Whatever enters the battlefield with Superior Spider-Man has triggered abilities. That's how they do their thing. If we can counter those triggered abilities with our 3-mana Tishana's Tidebinder or our 2-mana or 1-mana Detect Intrusion, we get away ahead, and that card, whatever they exiled, is still exiled. On the next turn, we return the Superior Spider-Man to hand, or we potentially destroy it. If we're running, for instance, a Get Lost, or coming up Erode would be another option there. Is it Spelementals? I've actually had significant difficulties with this deck. Give me a moment on that one. Mono Green Landfall. I want to go to this one. This is another one where we have a lot of good lines because of our ability, again, to interrupt creatures and interrupt plays. We also have growing threats, such as the Brineborn Cutthroat and our Lord's Plan. And we have the ability to tap important creatures and also return important creatures with our Flood Maw. And Spectral Restitching as well is another one that can, in a timely fashion, remove either an Ouroboros, remove an Icetail Explorer, or completely, again, with Tishana's Tidebinder, we can completely turn off these abilities. We have very good ways to easily interrupt these guys. And then as far as like sideboard plays are concerned, there's really Torpor Orb, and that's basically it. Serac gives them more cards, but Torpor Orb, the 2 of, is the only thing that really helps them out. Next up, well, the Izzet decks. I mean, the Izzet decks are insane, so let's just go through them one by one and just see kind of what the dealio is. Um, Already, I want to say that the whole instants and or sorcery cards uh, in the graveyard is saved by our rest in peace. So definitely keep that in mind. When it comes to things entering the battlefield, huge things like Sunderflock, this is really difficult to counter unless, again, we're countering the enters the battlefield ability. The creature that leaves is still incredibly difficult to deal with. And again, removing this, like in the way that we traditionally do by returning it to its owner's hand, does not help at all. Um, Very difficult. This is also a deck that has a lot of interaction. Some of it sorcery speed, but a lot of it instant speed. Spell Snare, unfortunately, really good against us because we have a lot of 2 mana plays. And then in the sideboard, I mean, Fire Magic does hurt us a lot of the time, but other than that, you know, it's pretty fine. Um, the big killer in this deck is really just the Sunderflock. This version of the deck doesn't have. I thought these used to run Ashling and other things like that. I guess not. Um, yeah, have to focus on the graveyard hate and have to focus on the countering activated abilities. Still puts us in a really awkward position though. Lessons, again, this is a deck for graveyard hate, um, countering abilities as much as possible. Um, it sucks because there's a lot of control in here. Ero's demonstration can at times really hurt us. Um, the ability to, yeah, deal just damage to creatures in a lot of cases, deal damage to all creatures, makes things kind of tough. And then prowess here. Prowess is another one that can, in a lot of cases, just really get around, just because of the evasiveness of the creatures and the interactivity of the deck. So the creatures are cheap: 1 mana, 2 mana. This one is 2 mana. It says not, but it is. Um, and then all of the interaction, all of the spells, again, are just 1 mana. So it's really hard to interact favorably with these sorts of things. Um, Storm Chaser's talent, again, I mean, we can remove pretty easily the token, but we can't easily remove the enchantment, unless you go back in there and uh, board in a bunch of seam rips and things like that. That being said, I mean, I still think that in a lot of cases there are really good matchups. I'm going to play more of the. I'm in the middle of a challenge. Unfortunately, I'm 0-1 currently, but I will play more of the standard metagames challenges, and I'll try to come back with more hard data next time. But essentially, that's what I wanted to do. That was the Omega-3 Fish Oil podcast. I hope you enjoyed it if you listened. And I will try to do this again next week. We shall see. Have fun with merfolk. I love you all, and have a nice day. Bye.